This is the interview of United States Magistrate Judge Charles Miller for the Oral History Project for the Historical Society of the United States Courts in the Eighth Circuit. Today's date is Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, and we're at the William Guy Federal Building in Bismarck, specifically in the Eagle Courtroom. I have known Judge Miller for a long time, and he has kindly allowed me to call him Charlie during this interview. Is that okay?
That's fine. Both Judge Howland, who's going to be doing the next interview, and I have known Bob for a long time as former partners in a law firm and an excellent attorney.
Well, thank you.
Specialist in employment law and probably one of the top employment law attorneys in the region of the state.
Well, let's get to your background. I know a lot about you, but let's hear it from you. You're from Fargo originally?
Born in Fargo, raised in Fargo, graduated from Fargo North in 1970, and probably would have stayed and went to school at NDSU, but I, at that point in my life, didn't think I could drink enough beer staying at home, and so I went north to Grand Forks and got my undergraduate degree at the University of North Dakota, and then went on to law school from there.
What year did you graduate from high school?
Graduated in 1970 from Fargo North. Yeah.
And then what year did you graduate from UND?
1973. I took pretty heavy credit loads while I was an undergraduate and went a couple of summer sessions, and so I graduated essentially a year early.
What was your degree in?
Political science. I started out wanting to be an economics major, but I looked at the math requirements, and I'm math challenged, and looking at the calculus and everything else that was required, I decided to change my major to political science. At some point, I thought that I might go on to law school, but pretty hard to do much with a political science degree unless you're
Did you have any specific honors when you were in undergraduate school?
I guess I graduated summa cum laude, and I was a member of, what's the Scholastic Honorary Society?
Phi Beta Kappa?
Yeah, Phi Beta Kappa, yeah. Right.
I have a recollection that you're a Phi Beta Kappa member.
Yeah, right.
So, growing up in Fargo, I mean, did you have any inkling you might want to be a lawyer back then? Did you have any relatives or friends or anything like that?
I didn't have any relatives or friends who were in law, though I was a Boy Scout, and one of the merit badges that I had had to do with was law related. And to get that merit badge, I went down to the Vogel Law Firm, and I had a session with one of the attorneys down there, Jerry Brantner, a longtime Vogel attorney, a very nice gentleman, and was kind of enamored with that. And between that and I think my father probably at some point suggested it as something that I might be interested in.
So did you do anything to further that interest? Did you eventually obviously went to law school? When did you decide to, take on that challenge?
I started thinking about it when I was in undergraduate school, and I was sitting in the cafeteria one day, adding up the number of credit hours that I had, and I thought, well, if I take a summer session, I could actually graduate early, and so I checked to see what was required for the LSAT and immediately signed up for that and took the test and got admitted to UND. But I had been thinking about it for some time prior to that.
You graduated in what, 1976?
1976 with you.
Do you have any interesting recollections of law school or advice you might give for budding people who want to be lawyers and go to law school? Any, sage advice, so to speak?
Boy, I don't know. It was pretty, I don't know if you'd call intimidating, especially the first year that, we were there. I think just trust in yourself, trust your instincts. You got admitted, and, if they didn't think you could do it, they probably weren't going to admit you. And so it's easy to say in hindsight, but to relax a little bit and take it as it comes. But.
Sure. And in law school, what were your activities? I mean, typical things. Obviously, you went to school or a class, but did you do any other, law-related or other activities during that period, or
well,
work in a clerkship that summer or something like that?
While I was going to law school, I worked part-time. I know it wasn't encouraged, but my financial situation was such that I did some work. Between my first and second year of law school, I bartended. I was the first person in our class to practice before the bar, but I bartended, and I continued to do that part-time while I was in law school. And then in my third year, I got accepted to be on the law review as one of the editors, and that was kind of a part-time position, paid for part of my tuition, but that took up a fair amount of time. So between all of that, my time was pretty well occupied.
Okay. As you were maybe getting towards the end of law school, what did you look for a future employment in the legal area?
I wasn't sure. I was very interested in doing some trial work. When I was in high school, I was engaged in some theater activities and speech activities, and kind of thought that trial work would be something I'd be interested in. I didn't really have an idea exactly what I wanted to do, though I did intern between my second and third year with the firm of Onstead Twitchell in West Fargo, and then in my third year they offered me a job, and I started work for them upon graduation.
I should ask, interest in trial work, did you take any trial advocacy type courses in law school?
Yes, I took the trial advocacy class that they offered at the time, and I participated in a moot court competition that was in Salem, Oregon. And so there were 4 of us that flew out to that competition, and we didn't place, but we had a good time.
Did you find that helpful when you actually started practicing law, that gave you some background at least?
I think it did. It helped with some of the fundamentals in terms of, for example, laying foundation for exhibits, laying the necessary foundation for certain kinds of witness testimony, how to comport yourself in the courtroom. It did help some, yes.
So following the law school exam, I assume you kind of were under stress like most of us are, waiting for the results. Yeah. Did you have some time off that summer or do something fun?
No, yeah, I just don't remember. No, I didn't actually take a lot of time off. I started work almost immediately with Onstead Twitchell and was doing, until I actually got my license, was, doing some briefing work for them and other work. So I didn't get a lot of time off.
Onstead Twitchell is a well-known firm in Fargo, right?
Right.
Did you have any particular expertise, or not expertise, but area to start with, or were you just doing everything?
They pretty much hired me to help out with the litigation work. Plus, they were Onstead Twitchell was the city attorneys for West Fargo, and the lowest person in the firm, lowest on the rung in the firm, got sent over to municipal court to do municipal court prosecutions. So that was one of the things that I did. Once a week, I go over to municipal court and be over there at least the full morning, maybe part of the afternoon, prosecuting misdemeanor criminal cases.
Good trial work.
It was very good experience being on your feet.
Did you do other civil type trial work then with the firm?
Yes, I helped with some of the personal injury work. A lot of it was just briefing, and then I helped, on a few odds and ends of things. But they viewed my place in the firm as kind of assisting with their litigation work.
So based on that, what advice would you give a new lawyer just starting in a brand new firm, first job?
Work hard, read as much as you can about the problems that are in front of you, because I think one of the things that I learned throughout my legal career, and I think that stood me in good stead, was that you don't know what you don't know. And when confronted with a legal problem, I think reading as much about the subject matter helps you kind of make sure you you're on the right track.
Okay. And subsequently, you left that firm and went where?
Well,
Or tell us what happened.
I started dating one of our law school classmates, Sharon Gallagher, and we continued dating after we graduated from law school. Sharon was from Mandan and had gotten a job in Bismarck with the Legislative Council. I was working in West Fargo, and we decided to get married. But to make that work, we both started looking for jobs. She was looking in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and I was looking in Bismarck. And the idea was that whoever got the first job was going to move, and I got offered a job at Basin Electric Power Cooperative, and went to work there.
Okay, and you and Sharon are still married, still avid golfers. Tell us a little bit about your marriage, maybe, or just...
Yeah, we're... well, it's a little embarrassing. I have to count now, but we're roughly about 43 years, I think, and we're still married. We don't have any children. Sharon continued, we both continued to work and just never seemed to find time with respect to children, but we both enjoyed playing golf, and we played a lot of golf when we were younger. Sharon's got some health issues now that really don't allow her to play too much, but she's been out a little bit. She's played, we were down in Palm Desert area in California this last winter. She played a couple of times down there, and she's played, I think, once since we've been back. But yeah, we both enjoy golf. And
So you and Sharon practiced in the same community for many, many years. Do you have any advice for people who are in that situation? I know that more and more people seem to be, dual career, both lawyers. How did that work out?
Well, we were in kind of different areas for the most part, though at some point in time when Sharon had a couple of jobs with the state and then moved on to private practice with her father, and her father had been a long-time city attorney in Mandan, and then when he passed away, she became city attorney. And but she wanted some backup, or needed some backup, so I became the deputy assistant city attorney when I was at Fleck, just to back her up in case she needed some help. And
Okay.
So we did overlap in that. But I think having the separate areas of practice kind of helped, and having other interests helped, so we weren't always focused on legal things.
Sure. When you were at Basin, what did you do?
It was a very interesting, exciting, and a great experience. I got hired there. They were in a boom. Basin Electric Power Cooperative doesn't serve any customers itself directly. It serves other cooperatives who distribute the power to the consumers, but they're in the job of generating electricity and selling it on a wholesale basis in some 8 or 9 states, parts of 8 or 9 states. Well, they were in a boom of building large-scale coal-fired generating plants, and when I started, they had one under starting construction down Laramie River Station in Wyoming, and they were in the process of planning a new station in North Dakota near Beulah, the Antelope Valley Station, and I got hired to help with that effort, and pretty soon after I started, I became the project attorney for that project, which was between the power plant and the related transmission for the plant was like a $1.3 billion project, which back in the late 70s and early 80s was still real money, and it was daunting. A young person just out of law school, and they were looking for you for their legal advice on all kinds of things. So.
How long were you at Basin Electric?
I was there for 5 years, and like I said, had great experiences. One of my biggest jobs at the time was to redo a set of contracts because the power plant was being built next to what ultimately was built was the country's first and only commercial-sized coal gasification plant, which was another couple $1 billion project. And the two had a lot of interfaces, and so we had to redo all we had to do a lot of contracts between the power plant and the gasification plant. I was doing the legal work for Basin Electric, but the people on the gasification side had Sidley and Austin and Chicago. The coal company that we were contracting for a common coal supply, they had Jones Day out of Cleveland, and so it was very interesting and challenging for a young kid from North Dakota dealing with the cream of the crop of attorneys out of state.
But it probably showed that you could do it.
Well, at the end of the day, I hope so. But
I'm sure that's true that you did. So,
but I was there for 5 years, and I had always wanted to do some trial work. I could see down the road that once these power plants that we were in the process of building got constructed, that we were going to have time on our hands and not the same amount of intense work that we were doing, and thought that there might come a time we might actually be overstaffed for in-house counsel. So I started, but mainly because I wanted to do some trial work, I interviewed with the U.S. Attorney's Office. They had an opening that they had an ad for, and I applied and didn't get the job the first time, but soon they had a second opening, and I applied for that position and got it.
And that was with the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Bismarck?
In Bismarck. At that time, and for the prior 10 years, they'd only had one attorney out in Bismarck. The rest of the legal staff for the U.S. Attorney's Office was in Fargo. Basically, it was too much work out here for one assistant U.S. attorney. In fact, the Justice Department came out and did a survey and ordered the office to hire a second attorney in Bismarck. So when Jim Hill left to go into private practice, they had an opening. That's the one I applied for and did not get. They hired Jerry Kettleson. And then when they decided to add the second attorney, that's the position that I received.
How long were you in the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I was there for about 5 years from, I was in Basin Electric from 77 to 82. I started in the spring of 82 at the U.S. Attorney's Office and was there until mid-1987, if I recall correctly.
Were you doing primarily civil, criminal, a combination?
Mostly it was criminal work, but there was some civil tort work where the government would get sued, so I was involved in some of that. There was foreclosure work for various government creditors, so there was that civil work. And then during the period of time I was with the office, they had the farm crisis in terms of credit and so forth, and we had a lot of bankruptcy work, and we had to do the bankruptcy work, and the bankruptcy work just exploded while I was in the office, and a lot of it was out west, and nobody liked doing the bankruptcy work, and I started doing it, and pretty soon they thought I had become the office expert, and so I was doing some for both the Fargo case, or the Bismarck cases and Fargo cases, and not by choice, but so yeah, we were doing more than just criminal work, and at that point in time, a lot of bankruptcy work actually.
Any significant cases or issues that you handled back in those 5 years?
It was a great experience for attorneys wanting to do trial work. If you can get on at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the positions, at least particularly in North Dakota, are hard to come by. In other states, it's a little bit easier to get on, but it provides wonderful trial experience. They give you great training when you're in the position. Yeah, I had the opportunity to try cases that were very interesting. One notable case was the wife of a superintendent of schools from Strasburg who was in her mid-50s, had a midlife crisis of some sort. She robbed the bank in Sterling, North Dakota at gunpoint, and a very unusual case. She hired the cream of the crop in terms of defense attorneys, Irv Nodlin, and he put on quite a defense. And the defense included two expert witnesses. One was a eyewitness identification expert, Elizabeth Loftus, who is probably the most notable person in the area in the country. And he also hired a psychiatrist, and that psychiatrist, she was in her 70s at the time she appeared for trial. She was the woman who diagnosed Sybil. The defense wasn't a multi-personality defense, but in fact, she probably shouldn't have been allowed to testify at all. But it was a very interesting cast of characters and case. Another time I got sent down to try a retrial in the District of Minnesota, where they recused the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota because the trial judge, Miles Lord, had interjected himself too many times in the first trial. And so the Eighth Circuit had reversed the case, and then while the case was on appeal, one of the charged defendants, who was in the wind at the time of the first trial, turned himself in, but also turned over a whole bunch of defense documents. And so then the defendants moved the court for an order to prohibit the trial because of the exposure to the defense documents. That went up on appeal. The Eighth Circuit said the case could be retried if they brought in a new set of prosecutors who didn't have access to the privileged information, and that's how I got sent down there to try a multi-defendant drug conspiracy case where the prime defendant, the target defendant, was an attorney from Miami. And that was a very interesting case, and it was a 2-week trial, and
Nothing boring about those two cases.
No.
So you were at the U.S. Attorney's Office for 5 years. What prompted you then to leave there?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it was wanderlust. I enjoyed the cases, the experience at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I didn't enjoy all the bankruptcy work I was necessarily doing. And some of the criminal cases, after a while got a little bit of wearing. And I kind of liked the civil work. And so I thought, well, maybe it would be a good idea to get an exposure in private practice, return to private practice, doing where the primary focus would be civil work, and I got a call from one of the persons at Fleck where you were working and were a partner, and inquiring whether I'd be interested, and so I followed up and eventually accepted a position at Fleck, Mather and Strutz. And, there were days there, quite frankly, when I had to fill out the timesheets and do the billing of clients, not the most pleasurable aspects that I sometimes wondered why I'd left the U.S. Attorney's Office, where I didn't have to do that kind of stuff. But I'm glad I made the change because it gave me a completely different experience and great experience, great law firm, and actually provided me with the background for the position that I ultimately was appointed for.
And just for the record, now it's Crowley Fleck after the merger with the Billings firm.
Right.
So for people maybe who don't know that. But so in your years at the Fleck law firm, I guess, first of all, how long were you there?
Let's see, I was there from 87 to 2004, roughly 17 years. It doesn't seem like it was that long, but I think it was in the neighborhood of 17 years.
And other interesting cases you handled in private practice?
Probably the biggest case I handled was I got hired by the state of North Dakota as a special assistant attorney general to go after the Burlington Northern for a diesel fuel spill case over in Mandan. Essentially, the Mandan has a large rail yard, and over time, the spillage of diesel fuel underneath the rail yard that emanated below ground to below the commercial area of the city of Mandan. And back in the 80s, the fact that that had happened was discovered when in the basements of some of the commercial establishments they were smelling diesel fumes. The health department intervened and ordered the Burlington Northern to clean it up, and they proceeded to attempt to do so over the next 10 years or so, and without a lot of success. And finally, the health department lost patience and decided to sue the Burlington Northern. And Senator Heitkamp, who was the Attorney General at the time, hired me to kind of lead the litigation effort against the Burlington Northern.
I assume you were up against some of the prior big law firms from out east that you were talking about?
Well, they hired a firm out of St. Paul, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Tim Thornton was the primary attorney, a well-known litigator there who had a blue chip list of clients that included Burlington Northern, Northwest Airlines at the time, and several other blue chip clients. A very good litigator. And eventually we settled the case after a second settlement conference. And I don't remember the exact amount of the settlement, but I think it was the settlement involved the payment of money by Burlington Northern into two trusts, one for the state of North Dakota to do the cleanup, another to the city of Mandan. And then the city of Mandan got some property along the BNF right-of-way in Mandan as part of the compensation also. So I think the value of the settlement was right around $31.5 million.
Significant amount.
A significant amount, yeah. And they took the trust money, the state took the trust money, took over the cleanup, and they're just winding it down now. In fact, they may be just about completed. And the good news, I guess, was that they had enough money, they were successful in the cleanup, and in fact, there's still money left in the trust fund. So
you mentioned private practice kind of gave you a good background for your being a magistrate judge. How did you first find out about, there might be a possibility you might be someone who could apply for that position, or how did you get involved in making an application? I think it's a mystery to a lot of people how people become magistrate judges, but maybe you can just tell us your experience.
Well, for a magistrate judge, you get the job by being appointed by the district judges of the district, but before the district judge appoints, they have a screening committee of citizens that screens the applications and makes a recommendation, and which the district judges can accept or not. The ultimate decision with the district judges. But I was aware of the position, having interacted with the prior person in my position as part of my civil practice, and kind of knew what the scope of the job was, and so when it came open, I was interested in doing something different, and it didn't involve having to keep time or bill clients, and by that time, having worked at Basin Electric and U.S. Attorney's Office, 17 years in private practice, I was kind of interested in maybe doing something else, and then I got some encouragement to apply.
So this would have been right around what, 2002?
2000. It had been a 2004 timeframe.
2004 timeframe. Okay. So you applied, you went through the interview process with the citizen committee or whatever, and got recommended, I assume?
I guess so.
And then who made the selection?
Well, it was both the sitting district judges, who would have been Chief Judge Hovland, and at the time Chief Judge Hovland, and Judge Erickson, I think he was on the bench at that point. So it was a combination of their two decisions. I don't know exactly how the decision was made, but I suspect, given the reality of the fact that I'd be working in Bismarck, that a lot of it was left to Judge Hellman.
I assume you went through interviews with both judges?
We went through interviews with, if I recall, both judges sat in, and I think Magistrate Judge Klein sat in as well.
Okay. In any event, you were appointed in 2004?
Started, I think, in November 2004. Right?
Okay. And you were a magistrate judge until when?
Well, I went on retirement status in November of 2018. Our term of office is for 8 years, and I was in my second term. I got reappointed, and I was at my 14th year, and that's when I would first became eligible for full retirement. And so when I became eligible for full retirement, I went on retirement, and then immediately went on what we call recall status because I didn't have my a replacement in place, and I didn't feel right just walking out the door. So I actually kind of worked full time, even though I was on recall until March, until Judge Holcoulter was appointed.
Okay. And today, are you still on recall status?
I'm still on recall status, working just a little bit.
Okay. Was there anything about becoming a magistrate that you found you liked, or didn't like? Was it what you thought it would be? Or was it very different?
It was pretty much what I thought it would be. I understood what my role was. I'm not the district judge. I'm in a supporting role. My job in terms of the criminal area was to take care of the preliminary matters, some of which are, advising a person of their rights and make sure they have counsel. Some of it is kind of perfunctory and to a certain degree trained monkeys could almost do. But then, I'd have to decide on, whether a person who's charged but not convicted, whether they're going to sit in jail pending trial or be released, and if so, released on what conditions. And that, I always took that part of the job very seriously, and it involves, people's lives and weighty considerations. And so, but I knew what I was getting into in terms of that, since I'd been at the U.S. Attorney's Office and was, very familiar with the process. Another thing that magistrate judges are there to provide a supporting role, and we end up doing things that the district judges don't want to do to some degree. And so handling Social Security cases, when those cases come on appeal from the agency, that's one thing that commonly is assigned to magistrate judges. And so but I knew that, and not important cases to the litigants, and I worked hard. I thought I worked hard on them to make sure that the procedures were being followed, but at the end of the day, weren't my most enjoyable cases, let's put it that way. Part of the job was to administer civil cases on the pretrial side and handle discovery disputes. I did not like handling discovery disputes, but I knew that was part of the job. And of course, having practiced in the civil arena for a long time, I had certain thoughts about that. And then the most enjoyable part of the job was, at least for me, was the fact that I was able to handle certain cases on my own on a consent basis, what we call a consent calendar, civil cases. And I could handle those cases, including trying them. And any appeal from those cases would be straight to the Eighth Circuit. It wouldn't be to the district judge.
That's a point I was going to ask you about. Have things changed from when you started to maybe now, when you see more and more attorneys consenting to trial by magistrate? I mean, when I was practicing, it seemed like there were more and more people consenting to trial by magistrate. I don't know what your impression was.
I think over time, we did get some more consents. One area of the practice that I didn't mention was holding settlement conferences, and that was another part of our job. But yeah, in terms of consents, we did two things. One, I think there were two factors that influenced the amount of consents that we were getting, in the fact that they were increasing in our district. One was the increase in caseload, primarily out in the west, to where if you wanted your case moved along, one way to do it was to consent, because the district judges were so overburdened with the amount of criminal work and civil work. And another factor is that we instituted a procedure where for the civil cases, for example, out west, every other case except for certain types of cases, but every other case a civil case would be initially assigned to me as a magistrate judge, and then the parties, if they didn't want to consent, would have to what we call opt out, so to speak, and that may have increased some of the consents to a degree, because it got the attorneys to focus more on whether they should consent or not.
I'll just say, from the practicing lawyer aspect, a lot of it had to do with who the magistrate was, and I would say that because you were one of the magistrates, people would consent to you being the trial judge.
Well,
I think that's a compliment to you.
Oh, well, that may be, but I think that part of that also goes to the people who came before me, particularly Judge Klein in Fargo, who was very well respected, very even-handed, very fair, and I think she did a lot to create that.
Did you enjoy the settlement part of the job, where you were the mediator basically, or?
Yeah, I enjoyed. It got me into a kind of a different arena, and yeah, I enjoyed the work, the settlement conference work.
If any lawyers out there are watching this, any tips for them on settlement conferences or mediations?
I think be prepared, know your case, know what the pitfalls of your case are, and then be upfront with them during the mediation, at least in the private sessions with whether it's the mediator or a magistrate judge serving as a mediator. I think those things are important. For the most part, I thought we had good people, good attorneys appearing, but there would be an occasion where it was clear to me that the attorney had not perhaps fully looked at the merits of their case, were unaware of certain aspects of it, and then sometimes hadn't prepared very well for the mediation with their clients, and that was the exception rather than the rule. But so I guess my advice would be know your case primarily, get your client prepared for what's coming up, and then being upfront with the mediator.
Okay. Overall, what is your recollection of your service as a magistrate? Just kind of a general impression.
It was a very rewarding experience. It comes with great benefits, but more importantly, the great people that I had to work with, and particularly Judge Hovland. I couldn't have worked with a finer person who's very fair, extremely patient, and if you ever wanted to be a litigant, you'd want to be before Judge Hovland.
Okay.
I probably would have had more consent cases if it were not for Judge Hovland, but I enjoyed working with him and the experience, and it was enough different from everything else I'd done. I just found it very rewarding. And then also, I had the ability to handle some significant cases, one of which I mentioned, but there were others. But more importantly, I didn't have to do any sentencing in federal felony cases, which is, for a district judge, a very wearing matter.
Okay. How would you like to be remembered, first personally and then second professionally?
Oh boy, I just think I'd like to be remembered for a person who people thought that when they appeared before me, I tried to be fair, and I tried to be prepared and to take very seriously what their issues were, and decide them the best that I could.
Officially, thank you, Judge Miller, Charlie. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for taking your time to share your history and your thoughts about the legal profession here today.
Okay, well, thank you for making the effort to come out from Fargo during this COVID crisis to do the interview. And we've known each other for a long time, and I'm very glad that you were decided to do this for us.
It was my pleasure to come out and do this, and great to see you.